I have a dear friend in the tarot community who I talk to regularly. This friend has been immersed in creativity lately. It's been quite the journey for her and for me, watching and listening to her talk about the process. And in that talking, we got to the topic of vulnerability, how putting yourself on the line and pouring your voice and your authenticity into art and then sharing it, it can make you feel so vulnerable. Now, I equated it to walking out on a narrow ridge, and I was thinking in my head of Cribgoch, a notorious walk in Wales, where often people need air rescuing as they become frozen in fear. That feeling of putting what you've created out there has felt like that many times for me. My friend equated that sinking feeling of stomach churning vulnerability as death by pencil. We both roared with laughter, the mini death to our soul as people's eyes roll and glaze over with lacklustre and obvious dismissive, "Oh yes, that's lovely." Each word triggering shame really, like vertigo out on the ridge. Call for the air rescue. We suspect we shouldn't have stepped out. We certainly can't go any further because obviously we aren't good enough. Death by pencil. The unique vulnerability that shows up when you share art. But we all know it whether we share art or not. That sinking feeling of shame as we suspect we just didn't step up high enough or good enough or just enough. It's a brave path to walk out on that ridge, whether we're sharing art or just trying to be our own authentic self. Every single time we do, we get to practice shedding shame. Shame resilience, Breen Brown calls it. And you better make sure that if you're going to try and do that, you take self-compassion with you. Self-compassion, self-kindness, self-love. Because only when these things come out on the narrow ridge alongside you can you take on that sinking feeling of shame, that death by pencil, and embrace imperfection. I've been thinking about this a lot as I share my first oil paintings with you, because I'm on the ridge, you see. I've discovered that each time I gently say to myself, it's okay, it's good enough, my self-compassion as a habit improves. Each time I'm scared that I'm not good enough and I can't measure up, but I head out onto the ridge regardless, my shame resilience increases. My imperfections are embraced a little stronger each time, and more green lights to keep going appear. This week has felt like being hand in hand with my imperfections out on the ridge, doing what I've wanted to do for such a long time, regardless of the dark whispers in my head. I've realised that that's courage, that's self-compassion. And telling you guys, look, it's scary, my stomach's lurching. Well, that's authenticity, isn't it? It's a kick in the face to perfectionism and fear. I've heard perfectionism spoken about as a sliding scale. It's not true that we're either a perfectionist or we're not. For some, it only shows up when they're really pushed into a vulnerability corner, but for others, it's chronic, compulsive, debilitating, and ever-present like an addiction. Now, my addictive soul sat up sharp when I read that. It would seem that there's a difference between healthy achieving and perfectionism. Who knew? You would think that that was obvious, but when I look back over my perfection-driven addictive life, I think, yeah, perhaps not quite so obvious. The good enough, the 70% rule, self-compassionate living, it's all been shrouded in a thick cloak of shame for me. Breen Brown says perfectionism didn't lead to results, it led to peanut butter. And I snorted coffee out of my nose laughing at that. In a week that's seen me sitting in my doctor's surgery having numerous blood tests because my body is now falling apart from the abuse I give it, I loudly proclaimed to the nurses through dripping tears, "No more Nutella, at least not by the spoonful." To say I can relate to the peanut butter quote is an understatement. The nurse hugged me, she got it, but we all get it, and that's the point. That narrow ridge and death by pencil is something that we all know. We are all just doing the best we can, and we all have the times that our toes have curled in shame, the clothes in the closet that no longer zip shut, the times our houses were trashed and the unexpected visitor knocked, the times we left the house with sauce down our top and unbrushed hair only to bump into our ex with his hot new girlfriend. The drawing that's so cringy we're about to put it in the bin just as somebody leans over our shoulder and says, "Oh, what are you making?" These are the human moments we all have when the wind blows us on that narrow ridge and our head gets dizzy, our stomach drops and our heart races. The death by pencil moments. These are the moments we most need to know that we're all in this together. Yet these are the moments we most often say, "This is just me. Everybody else has it all together." And they really don't. Elizabeth Lesser, in her book Broken Open, says that we're all just bozos on the bus, and it's true. Our world is filtered to perfection these days. The Instagram life, photoshopped snapshots of staged perfection that we compare our windy ledge to. It's a stick that beats us for just being human. Our self-compassion is being filtered out. There's a quote about self-compassion I love. "A moment of self-compassion can change your entire day. A string of such moments can change the course of your life." I thought about that this week. Being kind to ourselves, realising that we're all in the same place, being real and authentic, stepping out onto the ledge. It's a path of courage, and I think that path breaks down shame. Brené Brown says, "Imperfections are not inadequacies. They are reminders that we are all in this together, imperfectly but together." What a beautiful thought to hold on to as we learn to love ourselves, to be braver and to step out onto the ledge. There is a death by pencil to experience, but I suspect now that it's a death blow to shame, to perfectionism, and to a lack of self-compassion. Death by pencil. It's a narrow ridge to healing. So don't call for air rescue, just keep going, because we need to see your bravery, because that will make us braver just by watching you.